Welcome to the Bill Walton Show, featuring conversations with leaders, entrepreneurs, artists, and thinkers. Fresh perspectives on money, culture, politics, and human flourishing. Interesting people, interesting things.
Welcome to the Bill Walton Show. I'm Bill Walton. The 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing opens a few weeks from now in China. And the Olympic Committee's decision to have China host the event grows ever more dubious. It's clear to most observers that China is no champion of human rights as we understand them and conceive of them in the West, and that its Communist Party has become even more deeply committed to preserving its monopoly on power through state-sponsored repression, surveillance, and indoctrination. So why are democracies from all over the world moving ahead to send their athletes to a country so antithetical to their values? Is it because China has mounted a massive disinformation campaign designed to whitewash its image, or something else? To explore these questions, Chen Guangcheng and Reggie Littlejohn, returning guests, are back to tell us what's really happening. Chen Guangcheng is a Chinese civil rights lawyer and activist who's been a persistent voice for freedom, human dignity, and the rule of law in his native country, China. Blind since childhood, his human rights activism led to his imprisonment by the Chinese government for 4 years. And after his release, he remained under house arrest until his escape in 2012 when he came to the United States, where he's now a distinguished fellow at Catholic University's Center for Human Rights, and he's also the author of The Barefoot Lawyer, A Blind Man's Fight for Justice and Freedom in China. Reggie Littlejohn, my buddy Reggie, who is the president of Women's Rights Without Frontiers, has spent years campaigning against China's forced abortion policies. A graduate of Yale Law School, she's an experienced litigation attorney, an international expert in China's one-child policy, its surveillance tactics, and its social credit system. LifeSite News recently named Reggie as one of their People of the Year, Heroes of 2021, and a leader to watch in 2022. And also joining, who I just met, is Yaxue Cao.
Yaxue Cao.
Yaxue Cao, getting better. She was the founder and editor of ChinaChange.org, which is a human rights organization based on activities in China. Do you want to give us a quick summary of what your group does?
Yeah. China Change was founded in 2013 and based in Washington, D.C. It's an English language website reporting and translating about human rights, rule of law, and human civil society in China.
And you'll be serving as the translator for Guangcheng.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very pleased.
Thank you. So the Olympics in Beijing, good idea, bad idea?
Of course, bad idea.
Well, we've got a lot of reasons for this. There's, I think just they're seeing this as a celebration of everything they've achieved, and they're going to use this as a triumph, an awful lot like the way Germany used the 1936 Olympics. And they've been doing an awful lot of things to make Beijing pretty. Like, I guess they're trying to get the pollution out of the air in Beijing, and they've shut down all the coal-fired plants within a few hundred miles, and of course people are freezing to death, but the air will be a little cleaner. Reggie?
I am so deeply opposed to these genocide games that I, together with Frank Gaffney, founded a movement called genocidegames.org. It's its own website. We just launched a campaign urging the U.S. Olympics Committee to urge the athletes not to attend. And I also testified before the U.S. Congress in May. And the main thrust of that hearing was the fact that China is actively committing genocide at this very moment and throughout the entire games. As those athletes are competing, people are being tortured. People are being raped, systematic rape, forced abortion, forced sterilization. This is all against the Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities in Xinjiang. Forced labor, people in internment camps, like concentration camps, children separated from their parents and brainwashed to forget their Uyghur heritage. I think it is absolutely unconscionable that these Olympics are going forward. And I would urge everyone to go on to genocidegames.org. We have a new Align Act campaign. We've got about 36,000 actions. You can send emails to President Biden and all kinds of other people urging them to say that, to not send the athletes. You know, we have this diplomatic boycott. It's not enough.
Guangcheng, you wrote a very interesting op-ed in the Wall Street Journal December 29th, and you went into titled "No Democracy Should Be Participating in the 2022 Beijing Olympics." And you've accused the Chinese, I think accurately, of whitewashing their image in preparation for the games. I mean, what are they doing to paper over the abuses that Reggie cites?
其实中共呢，这个迫害人权一直没有停下来。
As a matter of fact, the Chinese Communist Party has never stopped persecuting its people and repressing human rights. And but on the surface, it claims it's a country with a rule of law and deceiving the world. So the persecution against the human rights defenders, minorities, have only increased over the recent years.
Well, Reggie cites some specifics for some groups that are being targeted, and that's absolutely happening. It's absolutely true. But this is a more pervasive sort of, I don't know whether it's genocide, but sort of pervasive oppression. I mean, they claim they're democracy. I don't remember any elections held in China except maybe the Politburo re-electing President Xi.
对中国从来没有过选举，中共的人大实际上也是
China has not had any meaningful elections. The so-called people's representative are all fake. They are designated by the party, and they act like rubber stamps. If they don't do so, they will be committing political suicide. There will be no more of representing people. So average Chinese do not know who are their representatives. During the two sessions, which are held every March, Beijing was under strict limitation for movement and stuff. Dissidents and human rights defenders, anyone on their list, are either forced to travel, to be taken out of Beijing, or not allowed to go into Beijing, or put under house arrest, or even thrown in jail.
我的一个战友，他的名字郭飞雄啊，笔名郭飞雄。
I will start with a specific example. I have a friend whose name is Guo Feixiong. Starting in 2005, we have been working together, fighting for human rights. And he was sentenced to prison, and I end up escaping China. And he has served 2 prison terms totaling 11 years from 2016 to now. His wife early last year was diagnosed with a late-term cancer. And Guo Feixiong, my friend, went to the airport. He's a free citizen now. He got out, he's released, he was released from prison already. He's a free citizen. He got to the airport. He was stopped at the airport from leaving China to visit his wife. His wife just died 2 days ago, and China again had disappeared him, and is not allowing him to visit the 2 children to take care of the aftermath. Anyway, my question is, in face of such an evil regime, why is the Winter Olympics held there to begin with, and why are the democracies have fallen so much that we not only not boycotting it, but participating in there, and what China is perpetrating on its own people will eventually be brought to the whole world if we don't do anything.
对，我觉得西方民主国家在这个病毒这件事情
Take
上还
another
没有觉醒。
example. Let's talk about the
我们现在的自由生
pandemic.
活已经
With
被
such
中
an
度给改变了。我们出
unprecedented
门必
pandemic
须戴口
upon
罩
us for 2
我们的
years,
工作
we're
都不得
still
不
not
停下来。
waking up.
那
We have stopped working. We wear masks every day, and millions have died. And how many more people is the death from wars we fought, from Pearl Harbor attacks? And now we're not even investigating the origin of the virus. And we're still looking to China for market and everything else.
This is the Bill Walton Show, and I'm here with Chen Guangcheng and Reggie Littlejohn, and translating is Yaxue Cao.
Yaxue Cao.
And it's just a fascinating take on human rights or lack of human rights in China and all the various interplays here. Reggie, you look like you're ready to weigh in here.
Well, I want to just follow up on what Guangcheng just said about the coronavirus. Okay, so there have been investigations into the origin, and at first they said, "Oh, the idea that it escaped from a lab is laughable." Now that's the main theory that people think that it escaped from the lab. So it escaped from the lab likely. They lied about human-to-human transmission, the Chinese Communist Party. They stopped travel from Wuhan internally inside of China. They allowed travel from Wuhan internationally. Now, it looks like they were deliberately attempting to infect the world, causing this horrific pandemic with millions of people dying. And now, at this very moment, they are experiencing an outbreak, and they are clamping down. So they have about 20 million people on lockdown in China right now, including Xi'an and including in Tianjin, which is close to China. It's like to Beijing. It's about a half-hour train ride. So my question to the U.S. Olympic Committee is, what are you going to do to keep our athletes safe from the coronavirus, number one? And number two, they're also having an outbreak of hemorrhagic fever, which is a horrible way to die. And what if one of the athletes decides that they're going to say something about human rights in China? What's the Chinese Communist Party going to do? What if they arrest one of our athletes?
Well,
what is our government going to do?
Well, there's all sorts of interesting parts of that statement. One is that the Chinese have decided they're going to open up their internet a little bit during the games. And they're taking the chance that nobody inside is going to break through that and say what they really think, including the athletes. And so it'll be interesting to see if we get an athlete talk about what's happening in Hong Kong or Taiwan. They're trying to be a little open. That's very hard for the Chinese. I'm telling you that. But yeah, I mean the virus risk, and they're going to have as much success locking down the virus as everybody else has, which means you can't confine people to their houses and expect it to stop. Wenqing, go ahead.
Bill, when China says they're going to open up the internet a little bit, they don't mean open up to all Chinese people. It's the village of where the athletes are staying and the media centers. So it's total a charade.
It's a Potemkin village.
It's not for Chinese people.
So I want to cover all these things, but the thing that's interesting we talk about, to me anyway, is that how pervasive is this oppression? I think about the maybe different categories: people locked up and disappeared, people under detention, people under surveillance, and people who are chilled from activities simply because they might be surveilled or punished by the Chinese Communist Party. And then layering above that is the social credit system. Mm-hmm. So everybody's getting marked good or bad according to whether you've done what the Chinese Communist Party wants you to do. Mm-hmm. Could you talk about how that layers? I mean, how many people are there like you who've been actually directly imprisoned or murdered or disappeared versus the more pervasive problem that we have with the Chinese Communist Party?
这个控制呢，其实可以说是无处不在的。
The
首先，
surveillance and the
从网
social
络控制来
control
讲，现在只要
are
你在网上
yes
发出
pervasive
中共不喜
everywhere.
欢的声音，那中
On
共就会在
internet,
网络
if
上
you
会封锁你的
speak
账号
any
以外呢，还会
dissent,
派警察到你家
your
里
account
进行威胁。
your accounts will be suspended or deleted, and people not only that, policemen will be able to. The New York Times has an article on this. The police will quickly be able to identify who you are and find you offline and threaten you. Sometimes take you away to the detention center. The coronavirus has given the Communist Party it's a gift. It's a huge opportunity. Now that China uses what they call a health pass, before the virus, the pandemic, they have to send people to either threaten you, beat you up, put you under house arrest, or arrest you. Now, when human rights defenders, activists, or average people who are expressing the slightest dissent on government policies, when you are traveling, they know exactly where you are anytime, any moment, and they can turn your health pass, even though you're perfectly fine, from a green into yellow or red, and then you are stuck. You can't go anywhere.
This sounds an awful lot like our vaccine passports that people are pushing here in the United States.
That's why I oppose
and Reggie's
it.
been very vocal
I
about
oppose
that.
it.
I'm actually going to be speaking at the march on January 23rd, March on Washington, to stop those passports, or to stop the mandates. But yeah, I mean, this vaccine passport coming to the United States, it can be used as a tool of mass surveillance and social control. And in China, if you get your passport into the yellow or the red, it's connected to your bank account and to your credit cards. They can turn off your ability to buy, to have money.
What sort of things lead to a yellow or red mark?
Just like she said, just like dissenting, the littlest bit.
Just more detail.
这个是这样呀，
Red means you're infected. Yellow, I think
绿色
yellow.
的，绿色的。
No, green 绿色是表示你是好的。
好的，对。
Yeah, green means you're healthy, you're tested, you're fine. Yellow, I think, means you're asymptomatic or but positive. Red means you're infected. So something like that.
But what he's asking is what would cause you to go from green to yellow to red that's not related actually to health?
I see.
Yeah, that's the big question.
Yeah,
That's where we
I
think
have
this
a-
is going here.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
I give you a recent example. A human rights lawyer who is going to do a case in the city in China, and the Chinese police wants to stop him from going, so turned his health pass into yellow. At the airport, he can't go. And also, during the recently, the State Department awarded a woman courage award to another human rights lawyer, a woman, whose name is Wang Yu, and to stop her from receiving the award in our embassy, they turned her health code into yellow while she was in another city, so she can't be there. And things like that, these are just the daily example. Of course, what we know is only the
Tip of the iceberg.
not even
Yeah.
the tip of
Yeah.
the tip of the
The
tips
tip of the tip.
Yeah, I want to talk more. You know，就是我想说呢，就是刚才他问我。
So you were asking, speaking of how many Chinese are exactly under this kind of surveillance and social control. Well, there is not a number, but we can ask the question, how many are not being controlled? For example,
That's great.
that's a great question.
Yeah, that's
For
great.
example, when the Chinese mouthpiece media outlets have their report on their governance or the coronavirus, whatever, and their policies, they would close their comment section. They'll show, if they don't, sometimes they accidentally leave it open, or maybe just didn't think about it. 90% of the netizens, the Chinese, will oppose it, will criticize it. On, for example, the lockdown in Xi'an, the lockdown 2 years ago in Wuhan, or the reports by Xinhua News and their CCTV. So it will be flooded by negative critical comments, and they will end up closing it down again. So from this angle, looking at this angle, just how many are not controlled, you can see that just about everyone, every outlet where you can speak are controlled. For another example, there is a citizen journalist, a former lawyer. Her name is Zhang Zhan, a woman, almost 6 feet tall. She went to Wuhan in 2020, in early 2020, and she reported what's on the ground, very every daily life there, nothing really that striking. But they detained her and sentenced her to 4 years in prison. Now she has been on hunger strike for over a year and is dying in prison, and China still wouldn't let her to give her bail so she can get treatment.
I want to put this in context because I think we're making the point. Surveillance and oppression and indoctrination is widespread, pervasive. And we've got 1.4 billion people in China. There are, 80 million members of the Chinese Communist Party? Does it matter whether you're a member of the party? Does that give you any special protections? But I've also understood that the only thing that matters is maybe the 7 or 8 or 9 people in the top in the Politburo that are close to Xi. I mean, who actually is running this, and who's free from surveillance? I think I know the answer, but
I don't think anybody's free from surveillance.
Nobody's free from it.
And I just, before we answer that, I just thought there's one little point that I want to make, which is that when the Olympic athletes go over to China, they are entering into, this surveillance culture, and they need to understand their movements are going to be tracked. All of their social media posts. It's interesting, they're opening up the internet for the athletes, right? They will for sure be tracking what those athletes are posting. What are they going to do with it? What if an athlete posts, something that's very critical of the government? What's going to happen? So I would not be surprised if they have some kind of surveillance in their bedrooms. I mean, would you be surprised by that? I think that no. I mean, they do that with
the Olympic Village is supposed to be a pretty wild place during the Olympics. So what they're tracking will be pretty interesting.
That's right. I mean, that's right. And so what so they're going to be tracking all of that.
Yeah.
They're going to be tracking all of that, and they can use it, to blackmail people. Like what if I'm not going to get into like stories like that, but I'm just saying that this is something that the U.S. Olympic Committee, the International Olympic Committee, has not addressed. They have not said we're going to stand by our athletes if they criticize China on Chinese soil. This is a danger for the athletes.
I don't think, I think I've said in the tease for the show someplace that if these Olympics were held in any other country with the same list of human rights violations, there'd be an international hue and cry to move it, flat out. But it's China. And China has hundreds of multinationals that are vying to do more and more business in China. All the sports companies, Nike, the NBA, the WNBA actually showed some courage on this.
The WTA, the Women's Tennis Association.
WTA.
Right.
But it just seems like we're talking about politics. We're also got to talk about the international business community and how complicit they are in what's happening here.
Right. So the international business community, as you said, they're deeply in bed with China. And not only that, but China has something called the Belt and Road Initiative,
Yeah, sure.
where they're basically buying off countries. So what they will do is they will lend money to a country that they think probably will not be able to pay it off. That's the point, to build some kind of critical infrastructure. And then when the country can't pay it off, China will own the infrastructure. I was recently reading that Uganda lost its airport to China. So China now has an airport in Uganda. But this is what happened.
Well, there's a term from my world in finance. It's called loan to own.
Loan to own.
And you loan people money that you know they can't repay, and when they can't repay, you take the collateral. And that's what they're doing with these airports. That's what we're doing with ports. They're doing this with all sorts of infrastructure facilities all over the world.
All over the world. So they're owning critical infrastructure.
So the reason you're getting crickets when it comes to criticism of the Chinese is they've got their fingers in almost everybody's pocket.
实际上呢，中国的
The Chinese Communist Party is very calculating, has been. It uses the market as an enticement. So the international corporations, Wall Street, they join they hand in hand work with the Chinese Communist Party, and they're making money in China off the Chinese people. So the Communist Party gets double-sided benefits. It makes money and also get technology from international corporations that help the Communist Party to maintain its regime, its rule of China. But so in short terms, the international corporations seem to be making money. But in the long run, you know what? The Chinese Communist Party is to force them to cough it out down the road. For example, take the virus, for example. How in such a short period of time, how many businesses have been stopped? How many transactions have been stopped in the track? So these international corporations, they help the Chinese Communist Party with the advanced technologies like a facial recognition, surveillance system, and computer monitoring system. And they are accomplices in this. And the mainstream media have reported very little of it. Otherwise, they are deemed politically incorrect.
对，还有就是说，其实中共很懂得去对西方进行渗透和腐蚀。
The Chinese Communist Party are very good at corrupting people and infiltrating organizations and people. Take in Washington D.C. alone, they spend annually $200 million on various purpose. Our politicians have been corrupted. For example, during the campaign, during the presidential campaign, or I think after the election, a Chinese think tank personality named Di Dongsheng, he said on video that who gave Hunter Biden the $1.3 billion for his fund. We helped. So we human rights activists, dissidents, and the defenders here, we speak out a lot, but we seldom see our politicians do anything because, in my opinion, they are being affected under some kind of a control.
I agree with everything that Guangcheng said. I would
Thank
just,
you.
not that it matters, but I would just say that the United States and 151 other countries are signatories to the Genocide Convention. And under that convention, we have agreed, the contracting parties confirmed that genocide, whether committed in time of peace or war, is a crime under international law, which they will undertake to prevent and punish. We are required by international treaty to prevent and punish genocide. Now, having a diplomatic boycott is really just a slap on the wrist. We should be having a full boycott, but at least we're doing a diplomatic boycott. I mean, most countries are not even doing that. So what is the message that it's saying to Beijing? Well, what it's saying to Beijing is, You can do whatever you want. You can rape, you can torture, you can murder. We're not even going to do a diplomatic boycott, and we're going to allow you to have the biggest propaganda coup that you can have internationally and stand up there for 2 or 3 weeks during the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games, talking just without any kind of control about how great China is and how China is the greatest country in the world. And this is egregious.
I want to bring in Hong Kong a little bit. Hong Kong, for years, decades, as I grow up in China, everybody of my age or younger, Hong Kong is this star. If Hong Kong is considered a free, it is not just considered, it was a free world. And in the West, the democracies have treated Hong Kong as a part of the free world, right? So Hong Kong, what I want to say is that the speed with which Hong Kong has fallen should scare everyone, and yet we watch and we seem to have been paralyzed, not being able to do anything. Oh my God, Hong Kong, we're only talking about 2 years. 2 years, a city like Hong Kong, over 100 years of a rule of law and under the British, turned into another Chinese city in 2 years. I don't know why people are not as shocked as I am. I mean, with that speed, how soon the Communist Party will turn the world
That's right.
upside down.
Well, the Chinese Communist Party, as you point out, has been just assiduously co-opting people, not just here in the United States, but throughout the world. You mentioned Uganda. They've got Sri Lanka. They owe something like $3 billion to the Chinese, and that's going to the next domino. But it's we've got the multinationals all tied into this, and it's not just us. I mean, Germany, I think we talked about before we went on the air, they have a new prime minister, chancellor, whichever the term is, replacing Angela Merkel, and Germany's part of this European-wide agreement about genocide, about how they're not going to do business with countries that engage in it. And in the first conference call between the Prime Minister of Germany and Xi, human rights were mentioned how many times? 0. And, you know, China's Germany's largest trading partner. And Volkswagen has half its sales, as somebody told me in Germany. That may be apocryphal, but I think it's pretty close to the right number. So for us to be successful in the work we're thinking about here, I think we're going to have to start calling out some of these companies and some of these politicians who are complicit with the Chinese Communist Party. Are you all doing anything along that? I mean, can we do the Saul? Do you guys are familiar with Saul Alinsky?
I am. Yeah.
Tell us about Saul Alinsky. He was
Oh.
a political activist.
Well,
who,
he's on the left and did tremendous amount of political activum on the left. So I mean, I don't know what else.
Well,
he wrote a book
he had
called
strategies, and one of the strategies
Radicals.
was you have to take an issue and you have to personalize it. You have to make it about a person and not just some abstract thing. I mean, when in your work in human rights in China, is there incidences where companies are doing things that you could call out as part of this this effort?
In our work, we didn't have a bandwidth to wade into that part of the business, putting pressure on businesses. But there's a Uyghur organization that has been pushing for companies not making product in Hong Kong.
With some
No,
success.
in Xinjiang.
Yeah, Xinjiang.
Yeah. The latest act bill that passed the Congress and signed into law. So that sort of thing. We need to. The thing is, the reason we're on this kind of a show, we have this show, and thank you, Bill, is that we need more people to know about it, to aware the awareness. We have to raise awareness, raise the sense of urgency so that the people say, oh, this is not something far away from me, having nothing to do with my life. Yes, it's at the doorstep of your life.
Well, the other thing is that I didn't have time to read the full article, but I think the Post recently published, the Post of all periodicals, posted a really in-depth analysis that China's been going out with requests for proposals for all sorts of technology companies here in the United States. And a part of every single proposal is to build surveillance systems into what Americans are doing. And so the same social credit or oversight or monitoring of behavior, they're seeking to push that out into the rest of the world. And I think they already have.
They already have.
And we fully expect they're going to be monitoring this show. So if you got anything you want to say to the censors personally, this is your opportunity.
Well, I'll say something. I'll say something to the Chinese Communist Party, which is that that I believe that not only should we have a boycott of the games for the reason that we've been discussing, but that China should be banned from the games. China should be banned from the games. Okay, so this is the same as Australia. No, excuse me. Scrap that. South Africa was banned from the games from 1964 to 1988 because of apartheid. So there's a precedent for this. I believe that not only should China not be able to host the games, if the games were delayed a year by Japan, the Summer Games were delayed a year, because of the coronavirus. I don't see why they can't be delayed a year because of genocide and be held in a country that is not committing genocide, and that China should be banned from those games and should be banned from every Olympic Games until they stop committing genocide and forced organ harvesting and the rest of it.
So we talked about coming on the show that we need to grab people's attention. I think you just did.
Well, and then the other thing is that China should not be honored by hosting the Olympic Games, but should be declared to be a transnational criminal organization.
Well, I think we're succeeding in getting that message out. I mean, remember, we talked about this before. China, the liberal world order, we invited them in, we made them part of the World Trade Organization. Right. They're going to get rich, they're going to become democratic, and they'll be just like us. Now, I want to make a distinction here because you're Chinese. I think we're not talking about the Chinese people. I think we're talking about the Chinese Communist Party. I think we need to make that distinction. This is not a cultural or racial issue.
Chinese people are the first victims of the Chinese Communist
Party.
That's it.
They're the first victims.
Right. I want to say 2 points. I want to make 2 points to your audience, to our audience. Is that I hope first of all, I hope you don't watch the Olympic, especially the opening. Do not watch. It is a propaganda show. Okay. If you do watch, and please do not gush about it. Oh, China did such a great job. Oh, that's gorgeous. The firework, the show, the dance, the music, and blah, blah. And when you see that, do remember, people are tortured, people are disappeared, people are blocked from speaking, people are losing their homes, people's land are taken away, and all sorts of, and millions Uyghurs are in concentration camp for years on end. So do remember this, and what you're seeing is not the real China. So that's one point I want to make. The other is that if you watch your favorite athletes or sports, the winter sports, write down the sponsors and try to boycott their products.
Great idea. Wenxuan?
Yeah， 对我觉得国际社会应该想办法阻止中共参与任何的国际活动。
I believe that the international community should start stopping the Communist Party from participating in these international events. The democracies have a lot of good cards to play. On the other hand, China cannot lose us. They are more reliant on us than we are reliant on them. for the democracies, China is just the market and money. But if they lose, we isolate China, they lose us, they lose their bloodline.
Would we talk about earlier the tip of the iceberg? I think we've covered the tip of the tip of the tip. There's so many other things we need to be talking about, but we're out of time. And so I want to thank you all for joining. We'll reconvene. We're before the Olympics. It'll be interesting to see how it actually plays out. Could be a catastrophe, but we don't know. I think they will try to stage manage it so it doesn't look like it, even if it is under the surface. This is the Bill Walton Show, here with Chen Guangcheng, Reggie Littlejohn, Yaxue Cao. Reggie, how do we reach you?
Well, okay, so there's the genocidegames.org where people can take action on this issue. And then there's Women's Rights Without Frontiers.org, which is my main website.
Great. And then Jean-Michel, you're reached at ChinaChange.org?
Yes, our organization's website is ChinaChange.org. Very easy to remember.
Okay, great. And then Xiangxing, we can find you at Catholic University and every place else, and we should all get people to read your book, The Barefoot Lawyer.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope since my story, I think you will know how to evil of the Communist Party. You will understand why we need to join hand to stand up against the Communist Party.
That's a wrap. Anyway, thanks everybody, and thanks for joining the Bill Walton Show, and we'll see you again next time. We'll be following up more with this show and related topics on China and the international community, and you can find us on all the major podcast platforms, YouTube, Rumble, and so forth. And thanks for joining, and we'll talk next time. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Want more? Click the subscribe button or head over to thebillwaltonshow.com to choose from over 100 episodes. You can also learn more about our guest on our Interesting People page. And send us your comments. We read every one, and your thoughts help us guide the show. If it's easier for you to listen, check out our podcast page and subscribe there. In return, we'll keep you informed about what's true, what's right, and what's next. Thanks for joining.